So this is meant to be more of an open forum in which there is some lively discussion and notes taking around how people are feeling and requirements and needs and all of these things. I have a brief, very brief, hopefully, introduction planned for this. And then after my brief introduction, we can go ahead and start talking. So let me start with this open forum discussion introduction. There were 3 core strategies that Wikimedia Germany drafted and shared with everyone later in the end of last week, right before the start of the conference, for the Wikibase ecosystem, for Wikidata, as well as for the combined umbrella of those 2 products together. And for Wikimedia Germany, ecosystem enablement is one of the 3 core strategies for Wikibase. So what does that actually mean? Over the coming years, what we are hoping to foster is an ecosystem of extensions, tools, and customer interfaces to emerge around Wikibase so that the software, which right now is rather generic, is meant to be applicable across a variety of disciplines and be very flexible, can be extended for specific use cases. And why are we focusing here? Firstly, we already know, based on conversations, based on activity in the community, that there are a number of projects that want to build custom extensions for their needs. Along those lines, the Wikibase Stakeholders Group was founded with a specific goal of jointly funding the creation of open source extensions. So the timing is right for us to make sure that this is something that can happen and happen successfully. We recognize that developers and service providers outside of Wikimedia projects, so not those that work for the foundation and not those that work for Wikimedia Germany, need access to clear documentation and other guidance so that you can build extensions that will remain stable and reliable for you over the long term. And additionally, these extensions are being built, and there should also be a clear pathway so that they can be made discoverable to others in the ecosystem and easily usable by others in the ecosystem. Cool. So we have some potential areas of discussion. I'm not going to dictate what we talk about, but these are some potential questions to think about as we start our discussion. So one would be, how can we grow capacity for external developers to actively contribute to the ecosystem? Another would be, what plans do you have for building extensions or other solutions for your projects? What challenges have you faced when trying to build extensions or tools for Wikibase? And finally, what would be potentially some good methods for making sure that you, as the community of admins, users, institutions, developers, and service providers, can have your needs be heard over the coming months so that Wikimedia Germany is fulfilling your needs. And with that, I believe we will open it up to the floor. And let me open up the Etherpad as well and place that on the shared screen.
Yeah, so I can see someone typing there, which I can kind of start reading out as they type along. So everyone who's not with the Etherpad open can, you can see it anyway. Brilliant. From my point of view, it's important that it's easy to contribute code to Wikibase.
And I might ask, if you would like to have your name associated with the questions that you put into the Etherpad, please do.
Would you prefer for people to unmute themselves and kind of come up onto stage, or would you prefer to do this in the Etherpad?
I don't know if
I can also talk here if it is easier. Yeah, I think maybe it's easier because typing something takes longer than speaking. So yeah, I don't have so much experience with software development, but I see in some parts it is difficult to contribute. For example, if you need a developer account or something like that. And so, for example, I like pause, and there I contribute some codes, and so I think, yes. So especially for some little tools, I think that is something what can be useful, and I think there can be some tools that can also help other people, yeah. And so I hope that in there that you find their ways that also such little contributions are welcome.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we recognize as an organization that contributing code directly to Wikibase core software right now is not easy. I think the process of making it something that can be done jointly by Wikimedia Germany and the community at large with developers, service providers, and volunteers is something that will take time. And hopefully sessions like this one and sessions that we'll do throughout 2022 will help us to uncover the spaces in which we need to improve, be it in the form of documentation or clearer identification of tickets that can be worked on by those who wish to contribute. Yeah. I think we have a second question, or we did have another question from Dragan, which has disappeared.
It has moved further down the Etherpad. Maybe, Dragan, if you'd like to unmute yourself and join the stage.
Oh, yeah, sure. Hello, both. My question was about some sort of developer onboarding program, because the hurdles to contributing to Wikibase are not so much technical, I believe, but you have to know the ins and outs of the system and how everything interacts with each other. And if you just make a simple contribution, it might just break everything without you even knowing or without you even being able to test. And it would be interesting to understand what would be a good developer onboarding program, kind of in a way, because I mean, we have worked with like developers too, but they are all like, they are basically Wikimedia alumni. And what is the way to get out of this, kind of?
I mean, I don't know if there's an easy way out of this. I think it's important to note that it's a very complicated bit of software, which has got a lot of history to it. So being able to easily make changes to any bit of the software is quite a complicated thing to be able to do. And to try and put some more meaning behind this, I would say that when we end up hiring new developers at Wikimedia Germany, I reckon it takes between 6 months to a year before most of these developers are able to really make a change to any bit with some degree of confidence. And there's probably some bits of code that people who've been here for a couple of years are still worried about making changes to, because they don't quite know how this bit of the jigsaw puzzle might impact other bits. So I'm not sure if we could realistically have some kind of boot camp or something, or a 2-week program or a 1-day program where we'd be able to get people up to speed. To me, I think probably the thing that we'd want to do is be able to find ways to make clear points where people can adapt the software without touching other bits, right? So yeah, this I think is probably the key thing, and partly that is probably trying to figure out where to make these cuts and where people should be able to extend the software and alter the software, and where it's probably part of this big overall complicated ecosystem where it will be much harder to make changes independently.
Just one quick thing, would you say the same is true for extension development, or is that something that could be made possible easier or quicker or whatever?
Yeah, so I think it's a good question. I think extension development for MediaWiki is in a moderately easy to start state, but still not super easy compared to some software projects you might contribute to. But extensions on top of Wikibase are, I would say, a bit harder than just extending MediaWiki. So yeah, I think still some-ish onboarding is needed, and I think we don't really expose an explicit way to extend Wikibase in many cases. All the ways that it's possible to extend it were really places that the Wikimedia Germany team put in to allow them to extend it. So I think, and this is what I assume you meant by extension development, you explicitly meant like a PHP MediaWiki extension rather than a more like generic meaning of the word extension, right?
Yes, yeah, something for that, yeah, that would contribute to basically how the WB stakeholders group is working. Yeah.
And I would just add, I don't think that the way we've currently framed and phrased this discussion implies that the only changes that the community will want to make to Wikibase are in the form of extensions, but that is likely a scope that we can start to tackle as a proof of concept for how we can make this all work well together. So in thinking through how we do this jointly, something, if we decide that the output of this should be some kind of a developer boot camp for third-party extension developers, I think that's a lot easier for all of us to get our heads around, define the requirements for, and actually produce than something broader, such as like full core code base onboarding plan, which, as Tom alluded to, is already it's difficult enough for engineers that are joining the organization, and potentially is something that we want to be focusing on in the coming years. But in the short term, particularly with the amount of activity that we see around extension building in the ecosystem right now, is something that would make a lot of sense for us to invest time into thinking about jointly.
I'll read out the next question and then try and answer it, perhaps. How can people get support if they're trying but need to ask questions about a part of the jigsaw? So I think that's like a great question. I'm not sure we have an official place where we provide support, and I'm not certain that we, at the moment, as an organization, kind of commit to providing support for third parties. I think you would find that people would be keen on like a, good faith, best efforts type process to try and provide support if you get hold of people. But I don't think, for example, we have like any working time or budget or anything allocated to trying to support people explicitly at the moment. I guess the classic places people are asking for support now are probably things like the Telegram group, also on the mailing list, which I think both of these were posted in the slides, I think. I might be wrong though. Maybe they're in the slides for the previous talk. But I think this is probably where most people are asking. Of course, there is also IRC, which is like a very much standard media Wikimedia type venue for looking for technical support. You'll find us on LibreChat under the the standard Wikimedia namespaces. Yeah, I hope that's vaguely helpful, but I think that's definitely something that we should be thinking about, right? I think we probably want to figure out what would be the right place to provide some kind of developer support, or even just a place to facilitate cross-developer communication. I don't know who asked this question. Was that a vaguely satisfactory answer?
There's been a follow-up actually about developers being on IRC.
I think some are, some aren't. There's definitely not a requirement anymore for Wikimedia Germany developers to always be on IRC. So there's no kind of guarantee. But I think people will generally, who are around, are happy to try and be helpful. But yeah, like I said, as far as I know, there's no kind of it's in nobody's job description to provide external support to developers. So this would definitely be like a best efforts type thing. I guess a follow-up question from me then would be maybe something like from the people here, what would be the place you would want to ask questions? I mean, there's plenty of possibilities, right? We could pick one place, but I don't know what places could be. It could be some talk page on a wiki. It could be the mailing list. It could be a Telegram chat. It could be a Stack Overflow topic instance, whatever. Like there's many options. What would people ideally want?
I think really that you have to make the call and say what's good for you, because you are resource constrained and you have the knowledge, and you should make the call, because you will get like 20 different answers of everyone's favorite chat application.
Yep, so I see a few comments along this thread from others, for example, from your own, which would be that it would be nice to have a public chat where people can ask development questions. Hugu's preferring a page on MediaWiki.org. In the interest of time and to accommodate a wider breadth of conversation, I would move on to the next question. We can come back to this one. And as well, people can continue adding to the Etherpad as they have thoughts around this topic. But the next topic would be from Jay Xie, which is, as the community develops tools, will it be possible to host a clearinghouse page hanging off the main Wikibase site for future potential implementations who might benefit from those who have done them? I would say in general, that's probably a very good idea. One of the things that I pointed out earlier is the need for discoverability of things like extensions and tools that have been developed by other projects specifically for their use cases around Wikibase. And I think on the one hand, it's great to enable an ecosystem of developers to emerge around Wikibase, but on the other hand, we have to make sure that their creations can be found and explored by others, as well as easily implemented. So the Wikibase site is very likely the location of a directory like this. We may potentially see that the Wikibase cloud platform that we announced earlier today would be a good place for that as well, either as a place to kind of experiment and see which extensions are working well and play well with Wikibase, as well as a way for extension developers to get feedback. I think those things are all to be defined. But in general, yeah, I think it's very important that discoverability is on our mind, and that we're not just developing extensions and tools for individual projects, but open source extensions and tools that can be used broadly by others as well.
So I could try and read out this question at the bottom, or no, there's a question before that, which I think we didn't get to, which I can ask. Is it always easy to differentiate extensions from change on the heart of Wikibase? So I think this question is basically like, how easy is it to know if something is an extension or should make a change to the heart of Wikibase? And I think the answer is this isn't clear. And I think this is probably some of the, this is probably some always difficult to answer question. But it depends on what like tool one is trying to build, where it makes sense to make the change. And I think on that kind of note, what I imagine we've mostly talked about over the last 20-30 minutes is specifically about like changes to Wikibase, the PHP core bit of code, which is not really where I think most of the vibrant development is happening on the Wikidata ecosystem. So there, I think people are building a lot of tools outside of the PHP code, right? They're building gadgets, they're building tools on ToolForge that use the APIs, they're building standalone tools that people are running on their desktop machines that connect to their Wikidata APIs. And I think these are also ways in which people might want to extend the software, which have a different yeah, different barriers to entry, maybe not necessarily lower barriers to entry, but different barriers to entry to building PHP extensions. And I guess where one makes that cut is not super easy to understand. But yeah, for example, if you want to make a shiny new command line tool to edit Wikibases, then you don't want to make a change to the PHP code, for example. But if you wanted to introduce some new way of storing, a way to store a new type of data, maybe you have to make a change to PHP code, or maybe you have to use something that's there already. Like, unfortunately, this is like probably up to the implementing developer to figure out what is the right way to deliver the value to whoever wants the tool. It says, which means we need someone to check that. So I think in general, this is something, as I said, that I would imagine would normally be left up to the person who is writing the code. So I don't know, you as a community project might come along and say, I want to be able to find a pretty way to view a timeline of something or whatever. I don't know, this is a completely like farcical use case, but whatever, or abstract rather than like farcical. And yeah, the person who's building that for you is going to need to answer this question. And yeah, I think this is basically, in many ways, this is often really what you're paying a developer to do, right? Not to actually write the code, but to figure out how to get your thing done. Yeah, some cat pictures or something. I could plow down the list of questions. Is this page still up to date? It says outdated at the top. I'm pretty sure it's out of date. Yeah, I'm pretty sure this is out of date.
I'm also pretty sure that page is out of date. I can read the next one, Tom, to give you a little break from reading, from David. So from my experience, another issue is related tools in the Wikidata ecosystem that are not provided by Wikimedia are built and maintained with not enough focus on other Wikibase installations. For instance, until quite recently, it was not possible to create properties using quick statements, something that is not required on Wikidata because of the formalized property creation process, but for custom Wikibases, this is really useful. That is very true. I think we have made various attempts over the past few months to recognize this, which is that quite a significant ecosystem of tools and extensions have developed around Wikidata, specifically with hard coding around Wikidata, but when you apply those to the broader Wikibase ecosystem, they just don't work. We spent some time last year on the Wikibase manifest extension at Wikimedia Germany, which was meant as a potential avenue for providing extension and tool builders another way of interacting with third-party Wikibases. I think we need to continue talking about this and continue thinking about ways to ensure that the tools and extensions that people are building for Wikibase can be used more broadly than just a single Wikibase instance, because every Wikibase instance, as you know, is unique and special in its own way, and will have different needs and requirements, and being able to communicate between different instances will continue to be important. But that's a really good point from David. We have, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. I was gonna plow on and read out the next one, which was from Magnus, which says, any plans to quality assure extensions built externally and review them? I imagine this is what this is saying. And I don't think we have any like fixed thing here. I guess there are some extensions and like things, whether you call them extensions or not, that we already put not really an official stamp of approval on, but we try and give some assurance that they might partly work. So you see this in the release process where, for example, where we at least test that, for example, does the version of quick statements that we ship in the Docker images let you actually make items on the version of Wikibase that we're shipping at the same time. And yeah, I mean, this isn't a grand thing, but on the other hand, this is, I hope, an improvement on the situation which was there before, which was you pretty much had no idea which version of some third-party tool might possibly work. Like, yeah, this is not really ideal. I agree, but I think it's better than the previous situation, which was like a complete luck that one patch might come from a third-party tool that would mean it was no longer working with your version of Wikibase, which is not really ideal. Yeah, I can solicit more questions, or is there anybody who wants to flag up a question that we missed? Maybe it scrolled past us in the chat, or possibly I didn't fully answer it, or Sam didn't fully answer it in the Etherpad. I can happily fill the airspace with some thoughts then, so we aren't sat here in silence. So I don't know if anyone caught the session. I haven't seen it yet, but I think there was maybe a session in one of the sort of Wikidata tracks about this new REST API that's maybe going to be partly relevant to people who want to build third-party tools for Wikibases. And yeah, this might be something that would be interesting to look at and to maybe even have some input on before the implementation of this is actually started, because this is going to be something that will benefit hopefully both crews of people. I haven't seen this talk yet, so I don't know the details of what was announced or what was going on there. I also eagerly await this improvement. I think you can just unmute yourself, Yaron. Yeah. I think.
Go for it.
Is it working? All right, great. So for MediaWiki, there are many extensions, and if Wikimedia makes some breaking changes to the core software, then there tend to be some people that go around and look for extensions that need to be updated and provide patches, or at least file an issue saying, hey, this thing changed, you need to do something. And I'm wondering if there's any plan for Wikimedia Deutschland to provide a similar service for Wikibase, in particular for the public construction of services in PHP, and also for changes to the core data model, because these two things impact extensions quite a bit.
Yeah, I think there is not a massive effort made by developers to go and search out places where this might be broken. In general, people are probably mostly doing things like on the day-to-day level. They're probably mostly doing things like looking in the code search tool from the WMF. So this includes everything on Gerrit plus some things on GitHub plus some other things. And generally, if there is something obviously breaking here, then we try and take this into account. But I don't think there is a. I think this is probably similar to how WMF extension sort of updates and things work as well, right? I'm not sure they're searching everywhere. But yeah, and I think we don't really have, for example, a formal stability policy right now. We kind of semi-inherited the one from Wikidata, which kind of very explicitly says that any of the PHP code is not stable. Like, there's no guarantee that we won't change any of this at any time. We try and make sure that we, as Adam says, that we consider the impact of it. But in general, we are probably doing things like bumping the version number if it's a breaking change, but not necessarily doing vastly more than that. And that's the state of things as they are. I can see why it would be nicer to have tighter, and I think it should be great. Like, it would be nicer to have tighter defined interfaces that we can say we won't change without giving some notice, or we'll change at a certain rate. But right now, yeah, I think the general attitude is like we don't guarantee any stability for the PHP code. Just like we don't guarantee any stability for the DOM that comes out of Wikibase. There are a few things we do guarantee some stability on, which are the serialized data model. I think we guarantee something about this, but how that's dealt with internally is, yeah, up for grabs, really. Sorry, Aaron, that was an excellently long ramble. Did that get anywhere near answering the question you wanted answered? Cool, thanks.
We have about 3 minutes left. I see that there's 2 more questions in the Etherpad. I suggest we try to tackle the first and see how far we get. And it's from Renat, and it's about the REST API. When it's released, will all apps based on the Wikibase API, should they be recoded?
I am not certain how this will be rolled out, but I'm imagining that we're not going to be turning off the Action API, which is the name people give to the existing API that's there. We're not going to be turning off this in the same version, I would imagine. So maybe they will need to be, maybe not. This is going to be super controversial for both third parties and for people who are building for wikidata.org. So the point at which this has breaking changes will be a big deal. So I'm imagining they won't need to be recoded in the near term. But I can't guarantee that, but that's my imagination. There will probably be some slower rollouts. Right now, I guess, following the stability policy, is it stability policy? Yeah. It could be within 4 weeks, but I think realistically, there's going to be a lot more discussion about how this should change, because there are, tools that have been written for Wikidata that have been running for almost the entire lifespan of Wikidata without being touched. And what are we going to do about these? I don't know, but something.
Thanks, Tom. We have 2 minutes left. I think we can try and squeeze in David's last question. Do you have an overview of which extensions are used in independent Wikibase installations?
I can maybe pass it on to Sam. I think we did some kind of outreach survey, which you can maybe talk about.
So we did do a survey last year in which we asked people to identify the extensions and tools that they were using. I believe we published the results of that to the community, and if that is not the case, then I will ensure that that happens in the next couple of weeks. The responses were not super detailed, though. I think that there is probably a need for us to do a more thorough job of finding out who is using what, even in an anonymized way. We did release in the spring the Wikibase pingback, which is an anonymized way of opting in to sharing your Wikibase's details with Wikimedia, including the extensions that you're using. I would say that that is the easiest way of making sure that we all have this information and can gather it together in one place for all of us to see. But as of today, there is a very limited number of people that have opted into the pingback. So the data there is not going to be super representative. But yeah, David, good point that that is also pretty important information for us to be thinking about and gathering and sharing with the ecosystem at large.
Thanks for that, Sam. We are at 55. We have another session starting in 5 minutes, but this is the end of this session for today. Thank you to both Sam and Tom, but also all the people that typed their questions and also unmuted themselves and contributed to the discussion. I hope that everybody takes a 5-minute break and we come back here. Lawrence will be taking over moderation and there'll be another hour of Wikibase sessions today. But I think it's safe to say that until now, it's been a very exciting track. It's been a lovely Wikibase Sunday.